For anything to change in this country, those ideas need to go through the United States Senate. And right now that body is so close, one state election could decide who controls that body. And for the first time in decades, the Texas race is competitive. Texas. It's the second largest state both in size and population. It's one of the most diverse states in the country with more than 10 million Hispanics. More than 1 million people have a license to carry a gun, 4.5 million Texans don't have health insurance, and more than 1.7 million people came to this state illegally. America's issues are Texas issues. The two candidates are young and they represent two completely different worldviews. The incumbent Senator Ted Cruz came to the spotlight as the state's Solicitor General. That's the person who's arguing for the state of Texas in court, including 9 times at the Supreme Court. That's more than any other lawyer in the state at that time. In 2012, he won a place in the Senate by upsetting a powerful statewide elected official, mostly by tapping into an unmatched pool of volunteer grassroots workers.
Imagine millions of courageous conservatives all across America rising up together to say in unison, we demand our liberty.
He drove the Senate to the right in the age of Obama, and he made waves the day he showed up in the Senate. He was a partisan enemy of Democrats and a thorn in the side of Republican elders.
When the majority leader looks us in the eyes and makes an explicit commitment, he is willing to say things that he knows are false.
And then he ran for president.
I am announcing that I'm running for president of the United States.
He hired some of the best political operatives in the Republican Party. He won the Iowa caucuses, and then he tapped into Christian and working class voters who wanted a completely different direction after President Obama. And he would have won the nomination if it wasn't for Donald Trump.
He is choking like a dog because he's losing so badly.
Nothing seemed off limits.
That is his first and last resort, is to go to sleaze.
Bad blood between the two continued all the way to the Republican convention.
Vote your conscience.
But then he lost, and he ended up supporting Donald Trump in the general election.
What happened to vote your conscience?
And now Cruz is a major Trump ally in the Senate. For the past 6 years, he has dragged the Republican Party to the right. He wants to spend more tax dollars on border security. He's against citizenship status for people here illegally. He says the government should play hardly no role in healthcare, and he's against limiting people's access to guns. His opponent, Congressman Beto O'Rourke, comes from a much different place. His views are completely contrasting Senator Cruz's. He fell in love with punk rock at an early age. He was arrested for burglary after jumping a fence at UT El Paso and arrested again for driving drunk. He worked in the internet and software world before entering El Paso politics. And just like Cruz, he came to office by upsetting people in power. He was one of the youngest members ever on El Paso City Council, and he used that position to criticize American drug laws. He even co-wrote a book arguing that the war on drugs had failed. Then he went to Congress in a 2012 election versus a very powerful Democratic incumbent. He believes everybody buying a gun should go through a background check, and he wants to ban high-capacity magazines. He wants a faster path for people to become citizens, and he wants to legalize the people who are here illegally now. A public option for healthcare, and he wants to take corporations out of the way people get elected.
We're going to be the big answer to the small stuff going on in this country right now.
But to win, he's going to have to pull off one of the greatest political upsets in history. Texas hasn't elected a Democrat to the Senate in 30 years. That's my entire lifetime. Republicans control each branch of government, and there are 800,000 to 1 million more Republican voters in this state than there are Democrats. So why would this year be different? Well, there are 2 reasons. Senator Ted Cruz has built a reputation. Some love it, some hate it. And then there's the president. Moderates and suburban women are having a hard time putting an R next to their name because of the president's rhetoric, reputation, and all of these scandals coming from Washington. And we've seen Democrats upset Republicans across the country all year, and a lot of people are saying if it can happen in Alabama, why can't it happen in Texas? Remember that experienced, professional, textbook campaign staff that ran Senator Cruz's election for president? Well, they're here in Texas. And if Beto O'Rourke ran a race the way it's always been done, he's gonna lose. So he's not. Beto's campaign is decentralized, relying on these local Beto organizations to organize events in their neighborhoods, and then he's literally just driving around with 1 or 2 staffers in a car. He's spent more than a year going to all the 254 counties in the state.
By being in Brady, I have a better understanding of what's on the minds of those in Brady that I want to represent than by relying on a pollster in Washington, D.C. or some other part of the country.
The crowds are getting bigger and bigger. These black and white Beto signs seem to be everywhere, and he's raising money, a lot of money. Even with that $2,700 cap on individual donations, he's raising more money than Senator Cruz. But with all of that said, money doesn't vote, and signs aren't people. And this all reinforces the myth of the undecided voter. I know very few people who are going to the polls and don't already know who they're gonna vote for when they walk in the voting booth. There is a blue team and a red team, and whoever shows up more on election day wins. And Senator Ted Cruz excels in that partisan politic world. O'Rourke is trying to challenge that entire notion. Yes, earlier this year, Democrats showed up and nearly doubled their turnout in the primary election, but Republican voters still had 500,000 more people show up. This really is a story about the pinnacles of power in Texas now versus what it could be becoming. And we'll find out on Tuesday, November 6th.